I can't do much about what people are going to do for Thanksgiving. I know what I'm going to do for Thanksgiving. I'm going to be right here at the ranch, the King Ranch in Jacksonville, and I'm going to be celebrating with my family, the folks that live here. And I put out a post tonight about carving a turkey. That's funny, the things that get engagement. And a couple years ago, probably 5 or 6 years ago, maybe 4 or 5, I was introduced to a different way of carving the turkey instead of messing around with it at the dinner table. And you got this raggedy old looking Charlie Brown Christmas tree for a turkey. I was showed how to make it and get the maximum amount of meat off of it and plate it, make it just look beautiful. And I said, man, you know what? I'm gonna start doing that. So I made a post asking people how they're gonna carve their turkey this year, and it was interesting all the colorful responses that we got. So I am really on my last day of the week. Usually my last day of the week is Thursday, but tonight it will be my last broadcast, be our last broadcast for the week, Impacting Life 24/7. All you got to do is go to CL King Speaker, clkingspeaker.com, and click on the podcast link, the international podcast link, and subscribe to our podcast. We produce this show every Monday night at 8:30, Tuesday night at 8:30, and Thursday night at 8:30. But this week, as I said, because of the glorious holiday that is right before us, I will not be doing a show on Thanksgiving Day. In fact, I may not be around on Thanksgiving Day. No telling where I may be. I may be in a coma, a self-induced coma. So here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Why did I want to talk to you tonight? What's our podcast going to be about tonight? Well, it's very, very simple. Again, if you're just tuning in, if you're tuning in live to our show, I want to welcome you to Impacting Life 24/7 with me, your host, CL King. I mean, I don't have a guest tonight. I am my own guest. That is the beautiful thing about this whole operation. You can bring in guests, and then you could be your own guest. So, I mean, I could be famous in my own world. What did I want to talk to you, my audience, about tonight? Those of you listening on Podbean, you can subscribe there at podbean.com. All you got to do is go to impactinglife247.podbean.com. Or you can find us on Spotify, Impacting Life /247, on iTunes, same thing. You can find us on Amazon, the exact same thing. You can go to CL King Group on YouTube, and you can find our archives of this show. So we're all over the place and expanding our net as we continue to grow this movement of impacting life 24/7. We're going to have a movement in 2021 of I-24/7ers, and that's people that will wear our shirts and contribute to our cause and our movement of helping people and making an impact on other people's lives. That's the whole reason why we created this show, ladies and gentlemen, to make an impact in someone else's life. So why did I want to have your undivided attention tonight? It's very, very simple. It is because the topic of my show tonight is called Space Invaders. And what I'm talking about is people understanding their space. Okay. People understanding their space. I'm going to get this podcast in. It might be a short podcast tonight. Get out your way. But people understanding their space. One of the challenges that people face in this new age that we're in, and I'm not talking about that it's so new, but we are in a totally different time period than any of us alive have ever seen. But it's been brewing, it's been building, it's been on the horizon, and maybe it's been coming and cresting the hill, and many of us were not prepared for it. Well, a lot of things that we do, a lot of times when we have guests on this show, they're entrepreneurs, they're business owners, they're aspiring business owners, career developers, singers. We've had every walk of life on this show, nonprofit founders, everyone you can think of, pastors, leaders, community leaders, officials, sheriffs, police chiefs. I mean, the list that we have ran the gambit of folks that have been on this show with us. And good evening, Dr. Dunlap. Great to see you, sir. And I hope that you have a good time at Kroger's with your turkey. He was one of those he was one of those jokesters that said he was going to have Kroger's carve his turkey. And Dr. Dunlap, who's passing by, I don't expect people to stay on the show the whole time, but one of the things that he and I did earlier on in the COVID-19 pandemic was I was able to and blessed to be with him as he held a several week long series on advanced preparations and getting your life and your house in order. Well, he knows as well as I do, and many others that have joined us on the show, or those of you that are watching or listening to our podcast, you recognize that your space is valuable. And if you don't recognize that your space is valuable, I wanted to share just a little bit tonight about why you need to stop pouring your dreams and visions and goals into those who are not in your space. Are you listening to me? You need to stop. You need to rethink, especially as we end this year and enter into a new year with new challenges, new opportunities, new horizons. For those of you that haven't bought stock in Zoom, you missed it, because Zoom is actually one of the number one fastest growing businesses online. I remember before pre-pandemic, they had about 10 million subscribers. And now they have well over 300 million, because people are now doing more things from their home. So we're shifting to what was coming anyway. And what I'm seeing people do, authors, people writing books, people getting into, selling jewelry, all of these different types of things. Here's what you got to realize: that not everybody that watches you is for you. Not everyone that passes by your live and maybe even makes a comment is really the fuel and the ingredient to get you to the next level that you want to go in. Now, here's what I'm saying. I'm not saying, okay, disengage all your friends on Facebook and social media and all that kind of stuff. But I am telling you that you're going to have to narrow your net. You're going to have to narrow your net when you're talking about building and advancing your goals and dreams. Entrepreneurs tend to be multifaceted people. You guys know that, right? We're like all over the place. And I teach a leadership course on multitasking and the dangers thereof, because people think multitasking is a good thing. Oh, I can multitask, I can do this. But what I teach in this course is you cannot give 100% of yourself to 10 different things. It's totally impossible. And so when you say I'm multitasking, what you're really saying is I'm dabbling in a bunch of different things, which none of them are receiving my full attention. And so we have diverse skills, all of us in the entrepreneurial world, and it's an insatiable drive to go forward and thrive and push and grind. I got a teaching called Grind. It's called Grind Mode, telling people to just get after it. But one thing that I will say is that we get distracted as entrepreneurs. We also, we see a squirrel, we see something shiny, and what's this new gig? I tell people, man, please do not inbox me with your latest, that you're going to you want me to be a Scentsy candle representative, because I'm not focused like that. I've been in the speaking industry since 2009, and that's really all I've done. I did a tour with Melaleuca, which was a great company, but that was in support of my wife, not because I was trying yet another thing. And we have a tendency as entrepreneurs to be like, okay, well, this might do it, and this might do it, and we're hearing this, this concept of multiple streams of income, which is important, which is powerful, but you got to get the first stream of income right first. A lot of dangers that people have when they're starting their business, or they're starting their entrepreneurship, or they're starting whatever it is their dream is, that they look at it as a highway. A highway, you have multiple lanes, right? You got multiple streams. You got and for a mature business, a seasoned organization, a seasoned platform, then that's a good goal. Okay, man, I've got this residual income. I've got this set. You know what I mean? I didn't start diversifying life insurance till I realized I could pay for the first one that I had. It wasn't that I said, okay, sign me up for everything. I started with one thing and perfected that. Okay. Yeah. And so one of the things that I think that we have to do is realize that scarcity sometimes makes us make bad decisions when we're not seeing the results that we are looking for, when we're not seeing the yields. A lot of people sometimes will come on my lives and they'll be like, well, dog king, I only saw a couple hundred people viewed your show last night, man, what's going on? And I'm like, yeah, but you don't realize that my show is on like 7 other different platforms, and I get the analytics from all of those platforms, and I combine all those together, and I'm like, man, dude, we in when things are really rocking and socking, because we're kind of tapered off from holiday season and vacation time. When things are rocking and socking, Greg and I's total net reach for the week is over 20,000 people a week. So I don't get overwhelmed by seeing scarcity in a particular avenue, because I know what my mission is. I know what my goal is. I didn't start this podcast exclusively to have people swoon over me and fan me and tell me how great I was. So, don't think that things are disappearing, or don't think that you're grabbing at this goal and it's vanishing before you. What you've got to realize is that you have a space, and your lane is your primary stream. It should be your focus. It should be like taking a small handful of kindling with a flint, and you get that first little smoke, and you begin to blow on that thing, and you got to nurture it. It is just like that. Your space is that. Okay. And it's very delicate. It's very important. And it's important that you don't pass the bundle of kindling around to 17 other people, because they're not starting the fire. You are. Okay. And what you got to remember is, don't attempt to build a highway. So what I have been really focusing on, especially during this COVID-19, I have actually met with my team virtually and talked about, okay, I talk about everything under the sun when they say we need a motivational speaker. Oh, we need you to speak on this. Okay, I'm that guy. We need you to speak on this. Well, that's because I can tailor a speech that makes it dynamic for any audience. But when I was meeting with one of my team members earlier last week, or before my vacation, we talked about narrowing my focus, even as a speaker. Truthfully, what I am is a youth motivational speaker, in more specifically for at-risk youth, helping them navigate and overcome adversity through the skills and experiences that I've experienced over the years, and how they can take real world situations that they may be going through and navigate through them and use them to their benefit. You know, multiple people can travel down multiple roads. Okay. You can have that's fine. But only you own your own parking lot. You can have people all over the highway, but it's you that owns your parking lot, and you get more specific, your parking space. I want you to understand something, ladies and gentlemen, that on Impacting Life 24/7 with CL King, it is important that you identify your space. Okay. And as you're rolling out what it is your vision and goal is, you're going to see that all those people who like when you post a plate at Outback, right? They like when you show them your Christmas decor in your house. Those are not the people that are in the space that you need to get moving forward in your business, or in your dreams, or in your goals. Because I can post a post about, listen, I want to help 1 million kids in North Carolina. Share our information with every school district, and that will get 0 responses. I can show a benign picture of a scarecrow in my front yard and say, hey, what do you guys think? And get 100 responses. Why is that? Well, I mean, the revelation that came when I talked to my team member, man, look, your space, those people are not in your space. They are space invaders. Y'all you remember playing that game years ago, Space Invaders? Yeah, they are space invaders, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, and I'm not talking negatively about the 4,800 folks that follow me and the thousands others that follow me. I'm not saying that you don't occupy a particular realm in my life. But when it comes to getting to where I want to go with growing this podcast and growing our speaking business and helping young people across America and around the world, you all are not in that space. And I'm starting, it's like light bulb moment, Dr. Dunlap, light bulb moment. Yeah. These folks, the reason why they're not responding is because they don't have a passion for your space. So what you need to do is stop investing and spamming the folks that are truly not in your space. Okay. So what you need to do first, I'm going to give you just a few tips here, and then I'm going to get on because the night is late and my wife is still working in the studio, man. And I'll tell you what, I like having a live studio audience. This makes the show even funner, more fun. If you haven't already defined your lane, you need to do an analysis of what your actual goal is. Because if you don't do that, the first thing in Lean Six Sigma in the DMAIC process is the D, which is define. You got to define what it is that you truly feel you're called to do. You got to define it, and you got to make sure that you're not putting yourself in a traffic jam. You've got to make sure that your space is your space. And then, you don't have to limit yourself, but I just want you to know that if you're seeing so many failures because you're trying to invest in people who are not in the same space, mind frame, mentality, all of the things that make what you're doing turn. If you see that you're investing in them and saying, hey, check out my this, and hey, read this, and hey, blah, 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 and you see that you're not getting the responses, especially in this digital world. We're in a digital world now. We're in a virtual world, and I believe it's here to stay. And so for those of us who were brick and mortars, I used to do 80 events a year in schools, in person, right in front of the audience. And now I've had to diversify and flip my presentation to be available virtually. And so if you're going to build this thing virtually, you've got to realize that there is a space for you in the virtual world. And it may very well not be your Facebook friends. Are you understanding me? It may very well not be your Instagram friends. It may very well not be your Twitter friends. Those people occupy a different realm in your life, but they are not in the space of what you're trying to accomplish and get off the ground. What's your unique skills and experiences that only you and a very few others claim? What is it that makes you unique? What can your clients or customers get from you that nobody else can give them? What words do your customers use to describe you? I know back in 2011, 2012, and 2013, one of the elements that principals used to describe me was the bullying prevention expert, because I went to schools and I inspired young people to flip the script on bullying. We created a training and a presentation called What About the Bully? Everyone was focused on bullying prevention, but we never dealt with how to rehabilitate the bully. So we started doing the random acts of kindness with students long before it was vogue to do. Did your thing mess up? And so, you got to start examining your most valuable skill sets. And then when you're examining your valuable skill sets, you got to find, okay, how do I take these valuable skills that I have, my space, and then pair them with people who are of the same space. Okay, so the last point in this is understanding your impact area. So you got to understand, impacting life 24/7. That's what this show is about. So my show is very broad. Anyone that's making an impact or wants to make an impact or has impacted someone else or that I can make an impact on, Greg and I, then they can come on this show. They don't have to be Ivy League educated. They don't have to be Pulitzer Prize winners. They don't have to be any of that. They just have to be someone with a heart and passion to impact life and impact others. That's a very, very broad description of our show. But now when it comes time to narrowing it down to, hey, what does CL King do outside of Impacting Life 24/7 podcast? What does he do as a speaker? What, because when you say, well, I'm a motivational speaker, and they're like, okay, so you talk on what? Everything? I start realizing that, man, you got to bring this thing down. Some of you are casting your dreams and casting your visions to people who are not in your space. They could care less about the fact that you're writing a book. And if they do care, it's just a novel passing thought. Oh, that's great. I'm glad you're writing a book. Way to go, buddy. And then you may even get some folks to participate with you for a very short season and sympathetically buy your book. But they're not in your space. They get your book out of kindness and friendship to you. They put the book on the shelf. They don't apply anything in the book, and then you go on. But there is another space of people that will take your book, read it, they will share it with others, and then they will invite you to come and articulate the remedies that are detailed in your book to their organization. See, that's when you can tap into people being in your space. Now, I can just tell you, being a podcaster, I've realized something even relative to the podcast world. Not all my friends on social media are podcasters. The podcast world is a very unique world. It's a unique world. It's a world, they say that there's different levels of listening that podcasters are, but the highest percentage of folks that listen to a podcast will listen to the entire thing. And I believe the locale that they listen to the podcast on is at home. And so podcasters are very specific people. It's a unique space. And here's what I'm realizing. Well, I may not see the overwhelming tsunami of response on asking people on my friends list to subscribe to our show. I may not be seeing, because that's another thing they got to do. That's another notification they're going to get and blah, blah, blah. And, it's just like, I got my own thing. I've got pastors, I've got principals, I've got leaders, I've got executives on my friends list, and they're not podcasters. So I'm like, this explains why maybe I have experienced a reverberation, if you will, of saying, hey, subscribe to Impacting Life 24/7. We're having people on that are changing the world. And they're like, okay, well, that's cool, but I'm not a podcaster. So I'm like, well, then you're not in my space. So why am I continuing to try to pour into you? Not that makes you a bad person, but you're not interested in what I'm doing. You have no desire to help me move this process or progress forward. So then I need to find people who are in this space that can help me continue to push the rock uphill. Determine where these experiences and skills are valuable. Locate your impact area. Locate how you make an impact. And then where can you make the most impact? What people are best served by what you do. And then how can you leverage your connections with people who are in the same space as you? See, because not everybody that watches you is in your space. Not everyone that tunes in is going to subscribe. Not everyone that visits your church is going to become a member. Not everyone that clicks on your website is going to purchase one of your items. So you've got to find people that are in the space for I mean, when I went to the mountains, um, and went to a particular store that I go to every time we go to the mountains, I went there specifically for a specific thing, the same thing I get every time when I go there. So they had that in that space of the store, and I went right to it. It was no if, and, or buts. There was no questions. There was no equivocation. I went and got another mug. I did the exact same thing in the caverns that we went into. I did the exact same thing in Grandfather Mountain. Every place that I went to, I was looking for a space, and they had the display set up for people who are in that space. God bless you, man of God, Pastor Franklin D. Brown. Yeah, they had that space set up for people who would be in that space. And if you were not a coffee mug, looking for a coffee mug, that space would not edify you. It would not benefit you. And if they didn't have a space with coffee mugs, that institution would not benefit me. Are you understanding what I'm saying? You got to realize where your space is. I'm helping you from a whole broad perspective. You can apply this across any relative perspective that you want, whether it is starting your business, writing your book, creating a craft, starting a church, pastoring a people, going back to school, all of these elements that people have dreams and visions of. You just have to be mindful not to continuously, laboriously wear yourself out, hoping that those folks that are your peripheral friends are in the same space as you. They're not. You're wasting your time. And this is why in 2021 we're going to be very, very laser focused on, hey, listen, you guys can stop by if you want, but we are getting people in our space, those that want to ingest a podcast, those that want to hear about people weekly. Like I just had a gentleman on a couple days ago. He was on a motorcycle and paralyzed himself, totally incapacitated, rehabilitation, in a coma and such. And he got himself back up. He grinded it out. He began to run. He had never been a runner before. Then he runs the Marine Corps Marathon, runs up the Empire State Building, has run several marathons since. And now he's a professional speaker and travels all across the country. He's got a book coming out called Open the Door. Why? Because he found his space. And every guest that I've had on has their particular space. And not every listener that would be listening to them at night would be their space. Here's your parking lot. You got to realize that your parking space is sacred. It's valuable. And you've got to start targeting those that are in your space. I joined just recently a podcast collaboration group. It's got about 11,000 podcasters in it. And since joining that group, I've been scheduled now to be on several shows. And that gentleman I was just telling you about is in that group. I had him on our show just like that, because he's in the space. Are you feeling what I'm saying? He's in the space of podcasting. He's in the space of content creation. Just the other night, I had Pastor Lee Anthony Styles on. I think that was last night. I had him on. And a lot of people, if you go back and listen to his story, there are so many people in this world, so many young people going down the same path that he went down. You need to get in that space and listen to that message that young man gave us last night. Shot 7 times, in and out of prison several times, felony convictions, drug slanging, in the hood. And then in prison, he finds God and God finds him. He got so low, ladies and gentlemen, that he was on a prison floor withdrawing from drugs in prison, naked on the floor, covered with a green towel. Yeah, and Dr. Franklin, you're exactly right, sir. People may be trying to sabotage your goals, plans, or dreams. They may get jealous. I've brought people on when our speaking business was at its all-time high, and they were seeing the revenue and income coming in, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I want to be down with the CL King group." No, you thought you was getting a check, and we need you to work for free, brother. Yeah, and so not everybody that is even in your general locale is in your space. Let me tell you something. The earth has its space. The sun has its space, and the moon and stars have their space. And if that is aligned in the correct orbit, everything operates seamlessly. It's when these asteroids begin to try to occupy the space and the gravitational pull of Earth that we find ourselves in trouble. Boy, that's prophetic right there. Yeah, you got to recognize that your space is sacred. I liken it also just a few minutes ago to a handful of kindling, some dried kindling, and you got a flint. That's all you got to start this fire. And just as you see it begin to smoke a little bit, you begin to blow on it and you protect it. That's your space. You don't go handing around the pile of kindling to some dude that's over there on the beach. He ain't trying to start a fire. You're trying to start a fire. He's thinking that it's going to be 85 degrees all day. He don't realize that at night it's going to be down in the 30s. So you're starting a fire right now, and you don't go over there and hand your fire kindling to the cat on the beach that ain't making any type of preparation. He doesn't identify with what you're doing. Are you hearing what I'm saying? And so we must, as leaders, as people of influence, as entrepreneurs, as folks that have dreams, goals, and passions, we must begin. I'm giving you this declaration for 2021. You don't have to thin out your friends list. You just got to thin out your space. And when you start getting people who are in the same space as you, and you start collaborating and connecting with them, the doors, ladies and gentlemen, begin to open. I remember, man, I had more engagements way without social media. I didn't hardly use social media at all back in 09, 10, 11. I didn't use it hardly at all. And I was busier than I ever was. Speaking all over, man. It was like I was double booked on many occasions. And why was that? Because I got into the space that was similar to the space I was in. What I mean by that is I started helping schools deal with students who were going through adversity, deal with students that were facing bullying, deal with students that were in low-income poverty situations. And when I began to do that and inspire the students and train the staff that teaches those students, I was in the space. And I wasn't trying to be in nobody else's space. And so in conclusion, on tonight's podcast, Impacting Life 24/7, with your host, CL King, I would like for you to subscribe. I'd like for you to go to clkingspeaker.com. I would love for you to go to impactinglife247.podbean.com and subscribe to our podcast. But here's what I want you to do. I only want you to do that if this is a space that works for you. Because, you see people that join groups and get involved in things or they connect with things only to just be a spectator. Well, this is a very forward, evolving movement, this Impacting Life 24/7. Our ultimate goal is to be able to bring people from all corners of the world onto this show to inspire people from all corners of the world. That's the broad scope of this show. But the narrow scope of what I do is an impacting speaker for young people who are at risk, help them overcome and develop strategies for overcoming adversity. That's what my goal is going to be, to focus on in 2021. In other words, I want to be in that space. To grow this podcast, I told Greg tonight, I said, listen, we've got to get people who are in this space. Okay, because a large portion of podcasters don't do a live. They just pre-record it. They put it out on, they uploads it to iTunes, Apple, and all the other places, and they continue to get it. They keep on getting down the road. Well, we do this live because I'm like, man, I want to bring these 4,800 folks along with me that are on my friends list. But the more we recognize, it's like, hey, look, this is not the space for them. They're not in the same space as me, as in consuming a podcast Monday night, Tuesday night, and Thursday night. And that's okay. We're still friends. We can still be homeboys. We can still be tight. I just recognize that I got to find the space that helps me push my vision forward. I hope that's helped someone. Because truly, I think some people get frustrated because they think people are in their space and they're not. They think people are supporting them and they're just observing. But people in your space, they're like, okay, what's the next thing? In that podcast collaboration group, I'm getting emails and messages every day. Hey, look, like to be on your show, like you to be on my show. Here's your information. Let's collaborate. That's those are people in this space. And then when you realize it, before you know it, because you have leveraged your connections with so many people that are in your space, now your space is residually moving forward without you having to grind and work and beg so hard for people to support you. But it is important that you find your space and recognize that not everyone that's in the peripheral is in your space. They're just in the crowd. But if you're, let's say you're growing mums, that's your space. Well, you can advertise on your social media to all your friends till the cows come home. But if those people are not in the space or in the need for mums, you're going to be frustrated and wonder why nobody's responding, because you're in the wrong space. You're trying to target the wrong people. Those are not bad people. They're not even disingenuous folks. They're just not in your space. So take your dreams, take your goals, take your visions and your plans, and put them in the right space. And you can join our space, Impacting Life 24/7. All you got to do is go to CL King Speaker, click on the podcast link, and subscribe right there to our podcast. You can also find us on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, everywhere. And so this is the end of the week for me. I hope everyone has a blessed Thanksgiving and a blessed day after Thanksgiving. Yeah, that's right. Okay, let me see what Franklin says real quick. My brother-in-law does the exact same thing. He's a motivational speaker focusing on helping young people. He has a PhD in ministry, and he has written 3 books. Maybe I can we can meet. Let's hook up. Let's connect. It's not just so. His name is Thomas Barksdale II. Yeah, see, and what that's why I brought my friend Lon Jordan on. Lon Jordan, I just had him on a couple weeks ago, the author of Sketch by Design. He and I just kind of connected through a very random occurrence, but man, me and him are in the same space. And I'm like, man, if I can help Lon and Lon can help me, man, there's enough of the pie out here for everyone to get a slice. I don't have to be so self-centered that I can't connect with somebody in the same space as me, and we leverage one another. That's why they got a seesaw. That's why you need 2 people on a seesaw. Because if you just have one person on the seesaw, it's an awful lopsided event, isn't it? And that's what I can tell you this. And Franklin brings up a good point. Making relationships with people who are in your space is so very, very important. And so don't get discouraged by the lack of interest or the lack of input by those who are not in your space. they're not in your space for a reason. You see what I'm saying? They're not in that space for a reason. So continue to love on them, continue to bless them, continue to smile at them, but realize that you got somewhere else to be for your vision. Now, if you want to get people's input on how your steak and lobster looked on the Marine Corps birthday on your plate, go on show it, because you're going to get 300 people to comment. If you want to make a poll and inquire, just like I did, whether I should get a golden retriever, hundreds of people looked at that post because a lot of people consume general information. They're like, oh, that's interesting. That piques my interest. But man, when you're talking about a more specific space, you're going to see, man, I got to make sure that I'm aligned properly, and I'm not trying to target my Facebook friends or my Instagram friends or my Twitter friends or YouTube friends who have no interest in what I'm doing. I've got to get into the space that helps me increase, not just have space invaders. All right. So again, happy Thanksgiving, everybody, on behalf of myself, Charity, and the kids, as well as Greg, the great Greg, the engineer and executive producer of our show, as well as Vice President of CL King Group. So delighted that he was under the weather a little bit, but he is back, and he told me to give my regards to you all tonight. So we got a few more guests to close out the year, and then we're already scheduling for 2021. Can you believe it? What started as a hobby has now turned into, I got to clock in every 3 days. So that's it, man. Yes, happy Thanksgiving to you, Dr. Brown. And may the Lord continue to bless you. All right, so do something kind for someone during this season, but not just during this season, during every season. It's not just the season of giving, it's the season for living. And we got to make sure that we don't forget the important things. You know, you can do all the things that seemingly matter, but man, don't forget those important and essential things, i.e. your family, your faith, and your future. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's been another exciting episode of Impacting Life 24/7. We will talk to you next week, Monday night, 8:30 p.m. right here live. God bless you. Talk to you again soon.